So in this video, we're going to be looking at page speed optimization, which is actually going to go hand in hand with doing a technical audit. So this video will actually kind of do a double job here. So the easiest way to do this, okay, is to start off with gtmetrics.com. You just go to gtmetrics.com. This is a really good site, okay, to run tests for page speed. There's other ones out there. This is the one that I prefer. It usually is pretty fast and quick to be able to do its tests. During the night, it might get a little slow, but if you enter your URL here and click test your site, it'll do a test. And keep in mind, this is doing a test from their server, not from yours. So it is completely regardless of your internet connection. It's a little bit more forgiving than the Google speed tests. The Google speed tests are insanely stupid. I don't even, we'll look at that later, but yeah, they're just insane. So this is one of my clients, just looking at his site here. We see that he gets an E. The Y slow score, okay, it's a C. But don't really look at those numbers. It doesn't matter if you have an E or an A. An A means absolutely nothing. What matters is what is your load time, because you could have an F, and if it takes 2 seconds, that's fine. But a 4.6 seconds, that's actually not that bad. But it's not where our goal is. Our goal is pretty much always to be around 3 seconds. 5 seconds is where it gets to get to be problematic. Each additional second over 5 seconds, they say that you lose about 10% of your audience. So you want to avoid that. But yeah, so 4.6 seconds, you can see your average. Their average is 7.2 seconds. So this site is below average when it comes to how long it takes to load, which is good. But again, we would like to shave about 1.6 seconds off of it. Now, off to the right, these things aren't as important as the amount of time, but they help explain the time a little bit. The total page size, the number of requests. You'll find that the number of requests, if it's below 100, I usually feel pretty good about that. Above 100, there's a problem. Sometimes I have seen sites that are 300, 400 requests. And that's literally how many different files that have to be called on to be able to build that homepage. They're JSS file, or they're CSS files, they're JS files, they're HTML files, and you know, those requests really do slow down the system pretty darn quick. If it's a WordPress site, also, whenever you add plugins, you're usually adding more and more CSS and more JavaScript, and they don't generally work in concert together. So you get a whole lot of requests. Now, with that being said, this is going to be going to thinkwithgoogle.com. And we'll do another page speed test here. So Think with Google is going to be, they're going to do what they consider to be a test of your site speed as if it were on a mobile connection that's a 4G speed. So we'll just enter into the address bar here the address of the site that we want to test. I almost always want to, if I'm doing testing, I try to keep it consistent with the site. And it's usually a pretty quick test. I'll give you a little bit of some headers here, or some helper text. But once that's complete, in the bottom right hand corner, it's going to pop up and it's going to show, I think it says like show my results or something to that degree. Once you click on it, you'll see, woo, 13.6 seconds on a 4G connection. It's how long Think with Google says it would take for a phone to be able to load that. That's really crazy just because it loads a lot faster when I count 1,000 to 1,000 on my phone, but that's fine. And it's just kind of what I'm trying to say is that think with Google almost always gives you some ridiculously high number. Every site that they test, they say is slow. You'll see that underneath where it says slow pages are load in over 2.5 seconds. So even if your page loads in 3 seconds, this is going to call you slow. So don't get too hung up on the fact that it's telling you you're slow. That 2.5 seconds is ridiculously fast. I mean, you'd have to basically strip everything off the page pretty much to make this thing happy. But it gives us a baseline to be able to fight back from, right? We know that GTmetrix says 4.6 seconds. We know that Think with Google says 13.6. You could go to pingdom.com, do a speed test there, as that's also a pretty popular one. But with the numbers that we now know that we need to figure out what it is that's slowing it down and how do we speed it up. So the easy way to do that is now we can actually start looking at the grade that we received. So the grade that we're receiving, okay, it's basically kind of telling us how optimized is our site. You know, I mean, you could have a very unoptimized but fast site, that's fine. But in this regard, you know, we want it to be faster. So how optimized are we? Not very optimized. Within this first thing here, okay, it says, you know, enable compression. It lists 2 file types right there. Neither of those file types are actually on our server. There's nothing that we can do about those 2 files other than pull those files down from that server, put them on our server, and then rewrite the plugins that's using those 2 files so that way they use them locally. In other words, it's a lot of trouble. So if it's something that's not on your server, you really can't do anything other than ditch whatever it is that's trying to use those files. Drift, for instance, is a good example of that. Moving on down from the top item there, keep in mind that your items are going to be differently listed, most likely. But so for this site, the second most impactful issue is serving scaled images. So if you think about like the first image here, we can see that it's 1200 pixels by 900 pixels, but it's actually being shown on the site as 580 pixels by 435 pixels. What does that mean? That means that we have more information about that, you know, more information in that image than what we actually need to be able to display it. And that's a poor optimization. So if we resize that image to where it actually fits the exact dimensions of what we're trying to display, then it'll save us time on both, you know, the download, and it'll also save the client, the visitor's computer, from having to figure out how to display it in that smaller field. That would be a 76% reduction, I believe is what it says on the screen. The same story with the image that's below that. It's actually not that bad that it's only got 2 here. Many sites that I've gone to and ran optimization, you know, there'll be tens or dozens of image files here. So we now know that, you know, we can do better when it comes to actually styling or sizing those images. The next thing down from there is optimizing the images. But wait, doesn't that sound like the last thing? Not exactly, very similar. But this is a, you know, kind of dumbing down the resolution of it. So optimizing the images here, we can lower the resolution of our images, keeping in mind, you know, that there's a resolution that you need to be able to print it out on a t-shirt. That is not the resolution that you need to be able to show it on a screen. So you'll see that I'm going to open up a couple examples of what do these 2 images look like, and, you know, what is the difference. So this is the original. All right, can't really tell much from it. And then the image before that, of course, we just saw, that was the optimized version, which is supposed to show some reduction, not much of a reduction in actuality there, but still the site's yelling about it. Here's an example again. So this is the original. and this is what they're suggesting we actually show. Do you see much of a difference? The point being is, on the screen, it's going to look exactly the same. It's just if you print it out on a t-shirt or if you print it out on paper, it might look, the web version is going to be not as good. But that would save us about 10%. So that's a 10% reduction if you use the new optimized version. The great thing about this tool is you want to save that copy that's optimized already for you. There's no need to optimize it. It's already optimized. Next down, we got defer parsing of JavaScript. This is actually kind of a tricky one, and I generally shy away from deferring parsing of JavaScript. Like if we were to take all the JavaScript and put it all in the footer, then yes, the page would, everything above the fold would show, and we wouldn't have to wait for the JavaScript. Unfortunately, many websites, especially WordPress websites, the headers, the navigation bars, those are all reliant upon JavaScript. So basically what's going to happen is until the computer gets to the footer and downloads those files, the page is going to look wonky. It's not going to look right. So for us to make sure the page actually looks right, you're going to probably want to either make sure that you know which JavaScript is required for the header to be left alone, or just leave it alone like I usually do. Now, not as obvious, okay, in their listings, but still very important. Number of requests. To me, that's usually the spot that I actually see the most benefit drawn from. This page requires 68 files to be downloaded before the page will be rendered. And those are going to be predominantly CSS and JS files. Of course, image files are going to be included within those requests. But if you're using a WordPress site, you're going to find that the CSS and the JS files can get very quickly out of control. So what we're going to do here is we're going to scroll on down, and you'll find within the area of suggestions here, right below there, you'll see where it says Minify JavaScript. Below the defer parsing of JavaScript, there's the Minify JavaScript. I'm going to expand it, and that is all the different JavaScript files that are being downloaded to make this homepage work. That's a lot of JavaScript. Do you need that many? Not really, no. It's also not minified. As you can see on the screen here, it's easy to read, right? Minify is where we take out all the white space, okay? So for a computer to render this code, it doesn't need all that spacing. All that spacing adding up does slow the machine down a little bit just because it's got to seek to the next line. This is only displayed like this for our benefit, for human eyes. So to speed it up, we can minify it, and that just removes all the white space. All that will go away. It does become really hard to read, but then it also speeds you up. And then so all those different files, ideally, we'd combine them. There's, in theory and technically, in theory they could all just be one. Going down, there's other areas, okay, that it's saying, you can optimize on. Keep in mind though that as you move on down the list, it's less of an impact. There's not going to be much of an impact if you're trying to work on something that you're getting 100% optimization in. So down here, not even worth your time. And also, like that one right there where the mouse was, 97% or 99%. If that's how optimized it is, don't focus on it. There's just really not going to be much of a gain there. But with that being said, we've just looked at the JavaScript files. There's also the CSS files, okay? So now you're starting to kind of get a hang on how many, in these additional files up here, how many different requests there are. So I'm going to go and give you an example of what does it look like when we minified a file. So a file, when it's been minified, looks a lot more like this. As you can see, stuff's a lot closer together. It's a lot harder to read and keep in mind where you were, but it works a lot faster. That's minified CSS files. Now, what am I going to do? Basically, we've seen what the speed is. Okay, we know that we want to gain about 1.6 seconds. We know that we've got some optimization that we can make when regarding the images, regarding merging some of the JavaScript, and also possibly moving the JavaScript down. So I'm going to go on and pause the video. I'm going to go on and do what we're talking about, and I'll show you the results. Okay, so we've gone from 68 requests to 45. I actually had this lower than 45, but added a plugin that's supposed to merge things and minify things, and ended up with a little bit more now. But you can see that the first rating came in there. Okay, I think it was 3.8. The very first time you run a test, it's usually going to be the higher one. So I always make sure that I run it a second, third, fourth, sometimes fifth, sixth time. Just because if you have a cache, then you're going to start caching the files, and there's going to be a lot quicker speeds there. When I'm talking about the cache, I mean like on edge servers or on the site itself. And as you can see, when we did a refresh, we did go down to 3.6 seconds now. I believe we were originally at 4.6 seconds, so we have now shaved ourselves down to, we've shaved off 1 second. That actually does matter, and our requests have gone from, I believe, 68 to 45, right? You can see that our page speed score has improved to 85%. With that being said, our optimization, it's saying that there's a little bit more room we could make, but we're a heck of a lot better off than what we were. As we can see in the screen, the number one thing that they want us to deal with is still serving scaled images. I did take the images that they asked for, and I put them onto this hard drive, onto the server. So they should be registering as the images that the site wants, but it may be that they're cached, and that might be slowing us down there. But you can also see right there the average number of requests was 89, by the way. It just popped up on the screen. But yeah, so the 85% is where we're at, and that's mostly because of those scaled images. As you can see, there's pretty much no other area that's not green. There's only one image that it is telling us that it wants us to swap out. So even though it's 85%, 15% away from 100%, all it's saying is one image is really going to be the thing that's left for us to do. You may double check and make sure that the exact file name matches that you swapped out. I'll do that. But also, by the way, we're using the CDN now too. And as you can see, the beginning of the CDN, the address that is, the beginning of the URL has changed. It's no longer the domain rileyforcounsel.com. Now it starts with, I can't really read that, I'm sorry. I think it's wp.com or something to that regard. Either way, though, that's the Jetpack subdomain. Now, keep in mind, okay, that optimization is only going to get you so far, okay? Sometimes it gets you all the way to the finish line, and that's great. But if you run into a situation in which you find yourself getting like a page speed score, it's an A, it's 95%, optimization is done. At that point, if you haven't reached the speed time that you want, you may have to look into infrastructure. And we'll talk about that in a different video. But when I mean infrastructure, like a shared hosting account, maybe is what you're on. Maybe what you need to be doing is more of a dedicated server. But let's look back at Think Google here. And remember our prior speed was 13.9 seconds. Let's see what it is now. According to GTmetrix, we saved a second. So we're going to put into thinkwithgoogle.com the address that we want to search here. And I'm going to go on and skip the loading, the actual testing part. So we'll just fly right on through to the results. And we find that our page speed now is 5.8 seconds. That is a good increase, good decrease. I think what we were at 13.5 seconds, 14 seconds. We've gone to less than half of that, so we're now at 5.8 seconds. What did we do again? Remember, we used Jetpack, which I don't generally recommend Jetpack. I prefer to use Cloudflare, but in this client's case, I didn't have access to the domain name servers, so I used Jetpack. But either way, that's a CDN that usually does a great job right there. With the additional speed enhancements that we did, the optimization, we've been able to cut down from 14.3 to 5.8. Sorry, 14.3 was as if we were on a 3G connection. Either way, though, we're now down to 5.8 seconds. And as you remember from earlier in the video, that was closer to 14 seconds. So that's a good change. So that is the end of this video, where we've gone over just a few tips regarding speeding up the site with using optimization. We'll make another video that goes over the actual server and the architecture of that. Thanks. Bye-bye.